Dan in Chicago, listening to WCPT.
Hi.
Hey, Dan, what's up?
I just can't understand why we don't need IDs to vote. It just doesn't make any sense. We need
Because
IDs
because the harm does not outweigh the risk.
Well, I was in a federal courthouse last week, and I needed an ID to get in. I
Right,
went to Walgreens
because
for a
the
sinus
harm
infection
that you could
yesterday.
cause in that federal courthouse would outweigh the risk that you could represent in that federal courthouse, at least in this post 9/11 era, outweighs the harm done to you by asking for ID. So we always look at these.
So what harm was I causing yesterday at Walgreens when I went in for their clinic for the ID, not for an ID, for a sinus infection, and they required an ID. Now, what harm was I causing there?
The potential harm to Walgreens was that you could sue them for treating you inappropriately, and they would have no record of it. They wouldn't know who you were and what happened. So they have to.
So they have an ID.
So the consequence of that potential harm to them, which is substantial, is asking for an ID. Now, here's the question: if George W. Bush successfully spent $74 million and 7 years urging his federal prosecutors to find people who had illegally voted, and they literally spent $74 million in 7 years looking for these people, it's so clogged up the federal prosecutors' offices that 7 attorneys, quit over this issue. You'll recall in the last year of the Bush administration, it was a huge scandal, and they were unable to find it. Rick Scott down in Florida spent some $20 million of his state's money looking for illegal voters. He found one guy. A guy from Austria who had become a Canadian citizen, who moved to Florida and lied about his U.S. citizenship, which didn't exist, in order to get a concealed carry permit and in order to buy a whole bunch of guns. And then he thought, hey, what the hell? He could use that ID to vote, and he voted in the 2004 and 2008 elections. That one guy. So the question, if you have a situation where the harm that would be done is that as many as 10 million U.S. citizens may be disenfranchised. A quarter of African Americans don't have the ID necessary to vote. About 19% of all.
They can't go to Walgreens to get better either, can they?
That's correct.
They can't go to a federal
That's
courthouse,
correct.
Can they?
That's correct.
Well,
that's correct, and they're not trying
to. Go to court?
And they're not trying to.
These.
Listen, let me finish this point. Okay. It's a very simple, very straightforward thing. You've got people who are never going to try and walk into a federal courthouse, who are never going to go to Walgreens and say, look in my ear infection, or they may go to a free clinic where they're not asking for their ID, who are poor, who are living in urban environments, who don't own cars, who live in big cities, people who are elderly, who no longer drive. You've got about 20% of the over 65 population no longer has ID that would allow them to vote. You've got about 18 to 19%, as I recall, of people 18 to 24, college age, who are still living with their parents, or they're living on campus or whatever. They don't own a car. They've never gotten a driver's license. When you look at the demographics of these things,
who are voting.
These are the groups who skew Democratic. These are the groups who tend to skew Democratic. You look at white males, the Republican voter primary demographic, it's 7% don't have appropriate ID. So you tell me that this isn't an attempt to suppress the vote.
No, but you're suppressing speech right now, too.
What, because you tried to talk over me and I kept talking?
Yeah, because you wouldn't let me get a word in edgewise.
I finished my sentence and I paused.
You realize in the city of Chicago, they print up ballots in 40, that's 40 different languages.
That's not what we're talking about. I don't disagree with you that English. Listen, Dan, if you want to change the topic to should English be the official language of the United States,
no,
I will agree with you.
You didn't hear me say that, did you? You're just interpreting what you want to interpret.
What does the ballot being printed in 40 different languages have to do with disenfranchising elderly people who can't get out of the house to go to the DMV and get an ID?
And do everything you need an ID. But you're going to let people
No, there's a lot of things you can do without an ID. You can live in the United States without an ID. Dan, it was conservatives and Republicans here in the United States. Dan, listen to me for a minute. Listen to this. Dan, okay, Dan, just listen to this for a moment, and then you can respond. It was Republicans and conservatives who went hysterical when Bill Clinton proposed national ID standards. Why are you guys all in favor of ID now?
Don't say you guys. Don't say you guys. The greatest Republican president probably was...
Teddy Roosevelt.
Well, I wasn't thinking of that. I was thinking more of Garfield, but...
Or maybe Abraham
Garfield
Lincoln.
Was more in line with your thinking, too, I would think.
Yeah, but nonetheless, my point is that it was Republicans and conservatives when Bill Clinton said maybe we should all have a national ID so we all know who we are, and it can be used, and you can move it to state. You could use it to vote. You could use it for all kinds of things. Republicans said, "Oh no, we're not going to have a national ID." You know what comes after that? FEMA camps.
Okay,
I'm serious. I'm not making this up. Go back and look at the. You had Michelle Bachmann hysterical about this stuff. And
I could care less about Michelle Bachmann. I could care less about national
or at least her
ID.
type. I mean,
I do think you should have a state ID in order to vote.
I don't think so.
That's only makes sense.
You do have to show ID when you register to vote. You have to show some evidence that you live where you are saying that you live. In most states, in many states, you have to show more than that. But you have to demonstrate that you're legally a resident there, and in many states you have to demonstrate that you're a citizen. But not every time you vote. When you vote, they compare your signature to your initial registration. And if your signature doesn't compare with your initial registration, they don't let you vote. And we've done that in every state in the union for forever. I mean, for a long, long time. This is a problem. This is a problem that doesn't exist. You guys are trying to. What you're offering is a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. But by the way, we'll kick about a quarter of Democratic voters off the rolls.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And as Paul Weyrich said, our leverage in the elections quite candidly goes up as the voting populace goes down.